Happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us and thank you for participating in this live this evening. So, we're just going to start. My name is Damilola Moyosore, and I am co-founder PetitHaus. For those who don't know, I am co-founder Relations PetitHaus, and I'm also a teacher. And I know a lot of people will want to ask why. How is a teacher talking about home ownership at the same time? These two things are related because change and transformation is at the heart of it all. So this evening we are going to be hearing and discussing, listening to your questions, responding to your questions, and hoping to enlighten you on what affordable really means, what affordable home ownership really mean. And I'm glad that you're here joining us. We look forward to doing a whole lot together this evening. And with me, I have Olushola Dada. He will be introducing himself. Welcome, Olushola Dada.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's my profound pleasure that you all take time out to join us this evening and be a part of this conversation. More than anything, I remain grateful to everyone. Thank you for being here. And I'm sure and confident that we'll be able to do really good justice to each and every matters of interest that concern each and every one of us. Thank you. Looking forward to a good time. And thank you, Damilola, for setting this up.
And in case you don't know, Olushola Dada is co-founder, team lead of PetitHaus because he doesn't like the title CEO, and I'm a co-founder relations. You are welcome. So, I'd like to make a joke to say December 31st, when we all went to church, our pastors prayed and prophesied, you will buy lands this year, you will build homes this year. Every one of us said amen. But then look at the economy. The reality and the prophecy is not going hand in hand. It's like, okay, so maybe at this point I focus on survival. And later, maybe in another 2 years, I can save up and then buy my own house or build my own home. So, this evening, like I said earlier, we'll be talking about affordable home ownership. And I know that that word affordable has different meaning to different people. So, I will be asking, in your experience, Shola, is affordable home ownership possible in today's economy? Do you think it's possible?
Yes, it's possible. But it's not a straitjacket that can be applied to all. And I say this with due respect to everyone that has uh, been on this journey for a while. And I do not say this also to disprove or disapprove the people who say it is not possible, because definitely we're looking at this conversation from different lens. When we're looking at it from the reality of the economy, and we think that everybody has to buy ready-made homes, yeah, that conversation is different. When we then zoom out and look at people, how we've been building right from time. Uh, Personally, I grew up in a town, and so I have the experience of people, churches, schools building by themselves. And so I saw how real time, certain changes, certain change in approach, certain creativity in methods can achieve almost the same results as going all out to buy that same property at the end of the day. So even if just from this angle alone, apart from the numbers of innovations, number of tools, a number of initiatives that are currently ongoing, because this is a very pressing issue for different people in different capacities. Apart from all of those initiatives running parallel at the same time, I can boldly say, yes, even though affordable is relative, there are options and alternatives that make this possible, that make affordable home ownership possible. Yes, it may be difficult. Yes, it may be a tough journey, but definitely with a little bit creativity there, with a little thoughtfulness there, with a little responsibility and accountability on the part of key players, yes, we are steps closer to affordable home ownership. Thank you.
Okay, so I hear you loud and clear. You say that affordable homeownership is possible in spite of the economy that we are in right now. But why do so many people believe that homeownership is out of their reach? Why?
Okay, different people have different goals. And like I said earlier, I tend to joke with this that a lot of us look at life from the lens in which we've experienced it. And so for somebody has who every day battles with approval authorities, with regulators, who battles with bank, and his bank is dragging him to repay his loan for debt recovery and all of that, and who is having issues with cement supplier, and they are dragging him, everybody's dragging him front, head, and center because of the cost of construction, cost of materials. That conversation is definitely going to get a different answer. But when you look at also somebody whose goal is just to make things happen for him in gradual, incremental stages, that is also a different conversation. So the reason why it makes different meanings for different people is because one, people are different. Two, financial capabilities are different. Three, exposure is different. Four, our line of approach is also different. Some people get lucky and meet professionals who guide them properly, and so, even though they have to pay professional fees, they end up having a smooth sale journey. While on the other side, some people think they can outsmart the market and then fall into the hands of wrong people, and so they get burnt, and this becomes a difficult, painful experience. So, like I said, different goals, different exposures, different lens. But one of the things that remains true is, regardless of how you're looking at it, some things will remain equal, and how well we can innovate around those things is what will make the difference. So definitely, while affordable means different things to different people, it doesn't mean that different people cannot enter the market at different budgets that is convenient for them. Some people are comfortable paying 100 million for a two-bedroom flat. Some people are also comfortable paying 100 million for a four-bedroom flat. So different budgets, different people. But one of the things that we know that is possible is it is very easy that when we look at the buying power of individuals, we create solutions that make it easy for people to enter the market at different entry points. So if your comfort zone is 30 points, you can enter at that point. If your comfort zone is 10 points, there should be solutions that exist for you. And I think this should be the balance between either sides of the conversation, whether you believe it's possible, whether you believe it's not possible, whether you believe affordable is vague. The fact remains that as much as we can help people come into the market at their comfortable entry points, can make it so for them that they are not sacrificing quality of life. Because definitely at any point of that pyramid or at any point of that journey, there are sacrifices. But one thing you should not sacrifice is the quality of your life. You shouldn't, your children shouldn't lose school because you're building a property. So you shouldn't end up lifelong commitment to spending 5 hours in traffic because you chose a cheap land. And so the bottom line that connects every definition of affordable, in my own view, is livability and the ability to enter the market at your comfort zone. I hope that makes sense.
Oh, yes, it does. So, I understood from what you're saying is that people believe that home ownership is out of their reach because of the lens from which they're looking at it from. But what we're talking about this evening is that there is something for everybody. So, if you're learning something new, please type yes in the comment section. You're welcome. All right. So now we've spoken about why people think that affordable home ownership is out of their reach, and we have already established the fact that it is still possible to own a home without breaking the bank, even in today's economy. Now, my question is for those who are out there who do not understand what this home ownership thing is, they don't understand it yet. So, what does affordable actually mean when it comes to owning a property, buying a land, building a house? It does it mean cheap? Does it mean that building a house will become cheap because of what we're talking about this evening? So, what does affordable actually mean when it comes to owning a property?
Thank you so much. First of all, I would like to say please feel free to drop your questions as I speak, or feel free to drag me back and say, please double click into this. And that said, what is affordable? Affordable is not cheap. Affordable does not mean less costly, because those, if you're looking at it from the surface definition of the words, cheap is different from expensive, expensive is different from costly, costly is different from affordable. And so because of the relativity of the subject, I will just dwell on the fact that genuine livability, considering the fact that, okay, I'm sorry for people who are joining from outside Lagos. Lagos always makes perfect examples, either as scapegoats or as relatable or as relatable descriptions. So permit me for this. So if you work in VI or Ikoyi, and because you found a 200,000 plot in Ekpe, and then you settle for it, yes, that land is affordable at that time. It's what you could afford by definition, which means for the rest of your working years, you are stuck with constant traffic every day, daily commutes, long hours in traffic, the stress that comes from that, the health implications of that, the vehicle repair, and all of that. By the time you even look at the cost of construction itself, having to move personnel, move materials to that site, rather than something that already exists with an existing ecosystem, you see that the cost of that of doing that, the cost of execution, the cost of use, and the lifetime use of that building then becomes expensive for you. And so when you put that together, it's no longer affordable. For people like me, jump bus, cost of transportation, let's put it at the 3,000 naira per week. 3,000 times five, that's 15,000 times four, that's 60,000 times 12 months, that's 720 times maybe 3 years, that's already 2.1 million, assuming everything remains constant as this. So when you look at that cost of transportation alone, you see that if you save that 720 over 20 years, or you've been able to assess some financial instruments to help you move closer to your work zone, that would have been a better choice. And so that's what I mean when I say livability, quality of life, living in places that support your quality of life, that brings you closer to the kind of community you want, the kind of friends you want, the kind of neighborhood you want, the kind of lifestyle you want to live, the kind of people, the network you want to have. We used to say that a neighborhood is as important as those that live within the neighborhood. And so these are the things that actually make for affordable. This still doesn't negate the fact that, yeah, there are still entry points. But yes, for that same example that I depicted, settling for a typical Aja or Shangotedo would have been better than going that far. And so putting those options, putting those conveniences, yourself, your future, the kind of expectations you have for your children, even thinking about the daily cost of construction, the daily cost of transportation, looking at those little micro elements will help you know that, okay, in the long run, this is not going to be sustainable. Let me stay, or let me wait, or let me be patient and work better towards a location that is more suitable for me.
All right, thank you very much. So, affordable equals better quality of life. That you're not doing it just because, oh, this is what I can afford now and all that. So as long as your quality of life is not reducing, you have peace of mind. That's it. That is what it means. All right. If you're learning something new, please give us a thumbs up. Just put in your favorite emoji or type yes in the comment section. Thank you very much for joining. Okay, so let's throw in some data into this, because now we are talking about defining affordable, and yes, we already established that it's possible to still own a home in today's economy. So my question is, are there particular groups of people who are mostly affected by the housing crisis? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Okay, let me start from where you ended and say, first of all, I don't like doing data because the strength of data is equally its weakness. Data doesn't give you context, it just gives you the figures. So I'm going to make this as contextual and relatable for everybody. So let's forget data. I apologize if I'm deviating, but let's look at it like this. We have grown ups amongst us, at least we know one person who has been in public or paid employment for years, and they could not even dare think about owning a land because the burden of school fees for children, rent, feeding, even keeping up. And it's until either they're retiring or close to retirement, or a few of the children have graduated, and so that financial burden is reducing. That's when they then think of themselves, then say, okay, now I have fulfilled my parental roles. Let me do something for myself. And at that time, the journey to homeownership starts. But because at that time, realistically, they've not been able to save that 50 million, we could say, oh, we could argue and bring in pension into that conversation, but it's subjective. So let's say at that point, how many of these class of people actually have enough capital to start homeownership? So look at the number of people that fit into this description that I just painted. So that is one. Number two is, let's look at people who are still in active service in their early 30s, 40s, and, doing well and climbing the professional career ladder. And you see, most would have young children that are just going to school and they want to give the best education, they want to give the best of quality of life and all of that, all of those financial commitments. Yeah, we could argue that they could get housing loan and all of that. But again, that is relative. But when we now look at the number of people that are in this box also who do not have access, to not talk about having maybe a 20 million, a 30 million to start, that gives you another idea. I'm sure many people can relate to this right now. I'm sure you now know, okay, yeah, okay, this affects a lot of people. And let's come down that ladder and look at people who are just entering the workforce, like we like to call them Gen Zs, whose salary is 150K, 200K, and has to do daily commute. But his rent is actually maybe 1.5 million per year, which means that 10 months out of his 12 month salary goes to rent. How do they think about home ownership? Or, yeah, we could say, oh, that person should double his hustle. But then again, that conversation is relative. And so this brings me to the fact that this affects everyone, everybody, everyone, across all demographics, across all class. Yes, the average middle income earners might feel this more, but I can tell you that even the people in the high class also, because it affects their investments. People don't have that much buying power. And so I like to use local languages. So financial projections have last days and it affects everybody. Yes, the truth is, in our cities, we feel it more because one, population density. And so a lot of people believe there are opportunities in the city. So population density, the scarcity of opportunities, or the abundance of opportunities, whatever, makes it harder for people to access quality housing. That's one. It also makes it harder because a lot of people are now earning, demand and supply. I don't want to go into all of these technicalities. Definitely affect the market, affect choice architecture, affects what's available in the market. And so because of that, I can just nonsense into the market and put premium price on it. So people in the cities feel it more. And so when Elogosian is talking about housing affordability, it's a 10 years difference from what somebody who is living in a town, like places where I grew up. Talking about affordability is different. But then the burden is the same because the economy affects everybody the same way. The cost of materials affects everybody the same way. Now, the nuances of those locations might be different, but I think it affects us all the same way.
Thank you. So, everybody is affected by this problem, the housing crisis. And somebody just picked into my question because the next question I was going to ask is okay, now that we've spoken about all these possibilities, we've spoken about the data and all that. So, what are the hidden costs or ongoing costs, as Olatujin put in there to say, what are the ongoing costs of home ownership that people often overlook, and how can one best prepare for them?
Okay, so first of all, there are no hidden costs in housing. There's a possibility that there are some things you're not prepared for, or you were not properly informed about, or you were not properly educated, Or maybe you thought you could figure it out yourself and you didn't work with a professional. So that is when it becomes hidden cost. Now, I'm not saying this to hide from the fact that there are bad actors within the industry. Definitely, there are bad actors. Definitely, there was a Judas in the 12, but actions of Judas did not make the remaining 11 bad. So, what most people refer to as hidden costs oftentimes is development charges. You have service charges, agency fee, this one charge, that one charge. And it's because, number one, government has failed in its responsibility. And I say this with all due respect, no politics intended. Government has failed in its original function to provide amenities. And so, in places where there are no such thing as basic as roads, as basic as electricity framework, there are no safety networks, there's no health services around. And so you realize that somebody just has some reserve funds and goes into a particular section of the city, buys it up, develops it, interlocks, installs electricity infrastructure, drainage, even maybe provides water and all of that. At the end of the day, the reality is all these costs are transferred down. Now, there are two sides to that. Some people feel that if they transfer the cost directly to the buyers, it's going to be too high. And so, to attract, because at the end of the day, it's marketing, to attract people to buy, we separate the cost of the house itself from the cost of all of these extra charges. So, we tell you the house is 50 million net. And so when you pay the 50 million, we then say, oh, and besides, we have spent 500 million on infrastructure, and that we're going to divide among the 10 people that are living within this estate. And so your extra bill is 50. In its sense, it's not an evening fee, it's just because you were not properly informed. So that's one. If you look at the journey of homeownership, the processes involved, starting from acquisition, acquisition is straightforward. The cost of land, the cost of your service charge or agency fee or the title, that is there. That is what it is. But that is number one. And when you're done with that, there are pre-development stages that involves your, if depending on what your goals are, that could involve feasibility studies to know if what you propose for that point is okay. But okay, let's just come down to homeownership, to housing. So the design services, I already said documentation and title goes with acquisition. Your design, your architecture, your engineering services, and all of that is in that point. At that point, your service provider, either your architect or your engineer, should let you know that okay, after we are done, the next thing is you go for approval. If before we go for approval, we would need you to do some tests to know what is under the ground, to know if the ground can carry what you're proposing. They will advise you. So those go with the professional services. And once that is done, you then proceed to construction. Now, construction is a whole ball game of its on its own because before you even start the building, you have to think about okay, how do I clear my site? How do I bring perimeter fence? How do I bring machines? How do I bring workers? How do I bring a site shed? How do I bring a storage? How do I bring this? How do I bring that? Even before you start anything. And so all of those moving, bringing, storing, saving, keeping, and accounting have their own cost. And then on top of that is now the actual cost that you pay for the building, that you buy the materials. Then on top of that is now the cost you pay for the labor to put those materials together. And then when that is done, there are now some post-development things, which may be in the form of okay, let's do our compound, let's connect drainages, let's connect NEPA, meter, you know, because of certain systemic failures, there are also some charges that you might not be prepared for that may come up. If you want to apply for a meter now, due process has its cost but has its length of time. Fast track process has its cost and also has its length of time. So you do your scale of preference to know which one to change. So really in itself, there are no hidden costs. It's just either failure of the professional to advise properly or the failure of the customer or the client or the homeowner to seek professional help. With guided professional help, nothing is hidden. Everything will come to you at every stage of the process. Thank you.
Thank you. So, in short, there are no hidden costs. What we have is people not asking the right questions. And I dare to say that when it comes to owning your own home, you shouldn't be afraid to ask any question. You should be bold enough to ask what is this, how is this happening, when is this going to happen, who am I paying this for, why am I making this payment. It's very important, and to also ensure that you're getting standard materials, because in the long run, if you go for the cheap materials, you will end up paying more to maintain these cheap materials, rather than paying it upfront and paying for standard. Thank you. So we're going to move on. It's not enough to talk about the problem. Now we need to focus on the solutions. This is where PetitHaus comes in. So, what solution is PetitHaus offering? As team lead PetitHaus, you're an architect and a project manager yourself. So, what solutions are we bringing in to solve this problem?
Okay, thank you. Interestingly, the fact that I just broke down the stages of the cost makes it a good next question, because what we're doing is actually just being creative about the cost. The cost of land, except if maybe tomorrow my dad becomes the president and I can then become a Lagos land distributor. Until then, we cannot change the cost of land, we cannot change the cost of cement, we cannot change the cost of professional service, we cannot even change the cost of service charge. But what we can do is innovate around it. I don't like using innovate because it seems like, oh, we've done something, it's something huge. We can be creative around this. So, in the same way that I broke down the costs that I mentioned earlier, I would just say these are the things that we're doing to achieve creativity to ease the burden of this cost. And all of this is tied to a model we call co-ownership model. Now, co-ownership is not new, but the idea is two, three, four, five, 10, 1,000, 1,000,000 people come together to do one thing together. That's why if you've seen some of our posts, you say it's like cow sharing, where one person cannot afford a cow, and so everybody contributes together, slaughter, distribute, and everybody gets equal parts of all the parts. And that's the same thing. It's been in existence as long as people have been owning properties. The only thing is just that it lacks structure and it lacks a legal framework that protects people, especially when it comes to security within themselves and loss of property to government, maybe if they've contravened. Let's start from land. For somebody who would have settled for a typical Lagos terrace building and then go pay maybe 400 million, what we're saying is maybe you don't have to spend up to that amount. Instead of looking for 400 million to come, break this into stages. Start with land. You're going to share that property. By the time you buy that 400 million terrace, you're going to own that property with three other people. So why not look for three other people from the beginning and share the land with them? The same way that terrace will have its compound, we have parking, we have where the water tank is. Some have maid's room, some have service balcony, some have security shed and all of that. The same way that developer property would look, you can also do it. Just remove all of those things and then cut the rest into four, so that each part, instead of now looking for maybe the land at that point is 200 million, each part now becomes 50 million. And so with the 50 million, you can start that journey that you would have needed 400 million upfront to start. So that flexibility and convenience is what we're offering at that point. Now, it doesn't stop there, because yes, apart from land, there is the cost of documentation, there is the cost of design, there's the cost of approval. We then say, okay, you also don't need to do this by yourself, because if you take that your 1/4 parts to an architect, it's going to take his full professional fee. Take it to an engineer, it's going to take his full professional fee. So why don't these four of you also present your, even though individual unit is different, I might want a 2 bedroom, next person may want a 3 bedroom, next person may want a 4 bedroom. We want different things. We can combine it. That's what architects do. I'm not boasting, but we can think through certain challenging terrain, certain challenging designs, and find solutions. And so we work how all those four separate properties look like one, so that it goes to approval as one. Now, if you zoom out, it's one building, but if you come in, it's four different homes built differently. From foundation to the roof, they are different. And that's why the technicality of architects come, but I'll come to that during construction. But in the real sense, professional fees for design, for engineering services, whether you need to do soil test, whether you need to do any sort of documentation, all of that is also split four ways. But the fact remains that your own plot or your own portion of that, which we call slot, a slot is a plot that has been divided into separate sections. So that slot is yours. You own it 100%. You have your title. Yeah, the title might then say this land belongs to Mr. A in position A, Mr. B, Mr. C, and Mr. D. But Mr. A's part is separated, Mr. B's part is separated, Mr. D part is separated, even though all of them are within the same property. And so that flexibility is what we are actually offering. So that with another maybe 2 million, instead of looking for 8 million on your own, you can access the same services that have delivered that same 400 million building. So right now we are at 52 million. Okay, remember the journey is 400 million. And then we then say, okay, construction starts. But then construction is fully your own. So let's say the cost of that building is going to cost you maybe another 100 million to build. Yes, that we cannot run away from that because the cost of cement is the cost of cement. But then there are certain alternatives that can be recommended to reduce that cost. You want to do a floor, and we see that that floor is not really too technical. You cannot use something else. We recommend that alternative for you with structural engineers backing to tell you that okay, this will work. We'll show you how it's going to be done. And instead of spending maybe 5 million for your slab or even on reinforcement alone, you've eliminated the need for that reinforcement and you're having floor still well finished, and at the end of the day still looks tiled or well finished as you would your normal concrete. So there are few value innovation that we can bring in when it now comes to construction methodology and construction materials that still achieve the same result, the same durability, the same quality, but at lower price. But then I think there is a caveat there that in so doing, the priority is not on the cost saving, but on the overall cost saving. So you might buy something now for 100,000 and it's going to cost you 1 million in repair or maintenance. Whereas you could buy another alternative that's 500,000 that saves you all of that edit entirely. In that case, we would definitely recommend that 500. But if you so choose to bear those running costs, the customer is king. But that would come after telling you that this is our professional opinion, and so we recommend this. So those are ways you can save that. So instead of that 100 million, and your cost will come down to maybe, let's be modest and say 80 million or 85. So now we are looking at 52 plus 85, and that, remember, the goal is 400 million. But there are situations where, oh, you don't have that 100 million anywhere, and so you have to start slowly. And so we come up with a framework where you can still do that and still make it presentable and then finish it over time. This is what we call incremental housing. So you can either decide, if what you have is a bungalow, you can start with a room. This is something we're familiar with. We're just bringing in, efficacy into it to make it trendy so that you can be proud to bring your friends to your house, even though it's just one room that is functional in that house. Passers-by will see you and are like, oh, this house is mighty. But inside, you're the one that knows that, okay, only one room is functional. Then when you become comfortable, you then extend to the second room. That room then becomes the sitting room. And then the next room, that second room becomes the kitchen. Then the next room. And before you know, you've completed it. So you can ease into that journey so that your 85 million is then broken into trenches that are comfortable for you to achieve. That's another that's the value that comes into the construction. The last part is now the areas of compound security, water, children play area, parking, and all of that. These four people can also still come together and say, let's use grass on this side. Let's use interlocking for here. Our water does not have to be heavy duty steam stanchion. We can do a subterranean and put pressure pump in it so that we don't save money, so that we don't lose money, or whatever the compensation is. And then instead of spending maybe another 5 million each for water, for compound, for all of that, we then divide it into four again. So these are the cost savings. These are the ways to ease the burden by bringing many people together so that more people can have access to housing. And so at the end of the day, we will now put all these costs together, Remember the journey, the target was 400 million. You see that with less than 200 million, you've achieved the same. Yeah, it might take longer. Yeah, it might be more demanding. You might lose some nights of sleep thinking of where the next money will come, but still you've been able to shave off that 200 million because definitely the developer has factored in his overhead, has factored in his cost, has factored in inflation, he has factored in loan repayments and also profit even before giving you that 400 million. So if at all nothing is saved, you've been able to cut off all of those extras that are transferred to you. Yeah, so that is how we are uh, being creative about cost. Because the truth is, even government is running from subsidized housing. And so the logic of waiting for somebody to build a subsidized housing and tell you this 5 bedroom bungalow is going to give me 3 million and you can take it will not work. Everybody is battling with the economy, everybody is battling with inflation, everybody is battling with cost of material. And so what we can do is just come together, support ourselves, and that's why we always say and we are building a community of people to come together so that we can ease one another of these burdens. We can help one another. I keep saying that I grew up in a town, and so I relate to how people come together to serve as labor for their neighbors. And instead of spending 10,000 that day on labor, you just buy food with 2,000. Everybody's happy, everybody helps itself. Look at it, a more relatable one is when parties are going to happen. All the ladies in the community comes together to cook the jollof. And so that saves the person, the celebrant, a lot of money. So this is the kind of idea that we're bringing in when we're saying community, when we're saying sustainability, when we're saying bringing the village effect into the city. These are all those parts that we're bringing into that creativity to ease the burden. I hope that makes sense.
Of course it does. Thank you so much. Before I do a recap of what he has said, this is your opportunity to put your questions in the comment section and I would read them out as soon as possible. So solutions that PetitHaus is bringing in. One is the co-ownership model, where you come together with a group of people to buy a plot of land, and each person has his or her own slot where they can build whatever they want with whatever material they have in it. Then there is the other one, the incremental housing model. They are not new. These are things that we know, and they are still in existence today. But incremental housing, in the way that PetitHaus does it, is to help you do it in grand style. A lot of people, we know this, many of our parents bought a plot of land, then they are building just a corner of it, then maybe 20 years after they decide to extend the house or they build the other parts of the land. But now what we are offering is that you can build a very beautiful carcass, the frame, build a very beautiful frame, and then you continue to do the work on the inside, expand as your money comes in. Okay, so does PetitHaus also settle fights? Because you know that there are some people who like to grab other people's land. No, it's important that we talk about this. So yes, you're sharing the land with two, three, four people. What about those people who don't like to respect their boundaries, that they just, overstep and just take small 10 inches from here, two small 5 inches from there? What does PetitHaus do? What does it do to make sure that this does not happen?
Okay, thank you. Let me backtrack before I come to that. Let me backtrack into some foundation knowledge about co-ownership. Co-ownership is not new. Co-ownership is widely adopted and supported by any physical planning authority. Because the idea is we can be calling it any name, we can call it lamp, we can call it this, we can call it that, but the idea, the framework is people come together to own one property. And that works everywhere. Number one, the legality of it is 100%. And then one of the things that supports some co-ownership structure is because all that the government cares about is it these people that truly own it? Can they give us our own due? Hope they will not be a nuisance to other people in the community. Because I think I can put all the government oversight functions when it comes to planning into those three headings. As long as those three things are in place, the only thing that the government will want to know is okay, we cannot possibly be talking to these 100 people that own this one. property. So they need one person. So by structure or by framework, there is going to be somebody who represents the interest of that group or that plot or that property. Because the way this method is built is, yes, you can do it with your friends and family. You can also do it with total strangers. But because we know that human nature is different, people respond at different time. All fingers are not equal. People will not have the same buying power or purchasing power at the same time. So when everybody's supposed to bring 1 million naira each, it might take somebody 1 month to redeem. It might take another person 3 months to. So what PetitHaus does is, apart from all of those cost saving, is we mediate, moderate, and coordinate. Just stand in line, stand in gap, build this relationship until they all accountable to this shared responsibility. Take for example, the first person has built, and the last has maybe been living in a property for 2 years, and then the last person on the road is just coming in. How will that person take his materials to site without disturbing the other people? How will he even build without pouring concrete onto the next person's roof, especially if that person's building is low? These are the things that will come in and advise, guide, and say, oh, okay, before you start this has to be in place. We'll also be supporting LAPCA to ensure that quality is not compromised. But like I said, these buildings are separate. So if I build mine wrongly and it collapses, the collapse is not going to affect only me. There's a tendency it affects Mr. A and Mr. B on my side. There's also a tendency it affects the person in front or behind. So to make sure that, yeah, everything is in line for the safety and security of everybody. In fact, we will be the first lab cat to say, no, you cannot build like that. There is a possibility of working with us, of saying, oh, I can't handle this, but it will do it for me. But that's not the focus. The focus is do it, bend. We are helping you bend the market to your budget. Okay, that's the number one purpose. So as long as you can achieve that, then the conversation of whether you can do it or whether you need help then comes after. We can definitely structure arrangements that takes the burden of worrying about how to build from you. But definitely, what you get is we are going to be in everybody's face to make sure that this is done perfectly. But then there's also another caveat. If the people in that property believe that they can handle themselves, they can just say, "Petitas, you have tried for us, bye bye now." And we say, okay, we shake hands. As long as the co owners are accountable to their responsibilities and they believe they can own up to their responsibility, totally perfect. All is well when all is well.
Okay, thank you very much. Somebody is asking, how can I determine if I'm financially ready to own a home instead of renting?
Okay, let me look at it from the surface. I think what I would advise is one, what are your goals? What are your goals? That same conversation to a business owner is different from somebody who has a growing family. Okay, for a business owner, it will tell you don't tie that money, put it into the business. But for somebody, a parent with children who has goals or plans for stability, because yeah, one of the things that we often overlook is how much of a contribution that stability of not even having to worry about rent plays in growth and progress of families. We often don't acknowledge it, but it's a lot. It's a lot. Just for not paying rent takes a whole lot of burden off you. To know if you're ready is one, what is your income? How much of that is disposable? How much of that can you sacrifice? And if push comes to shove, how much can you generate? If it's I must do it, how much can you generate? So that this conversation to somebody in public service means okay, this is my salary. I can 10% of this is disposable, and I can let go of 90% of that 10%, so I can do something within that range. And if push comes to shove, I can get a housing loan. So that conversation has changed. Or I can get a microfinance loan because you just see a good deal and you cannot just let it pass because you've put all of this together and you're like, okay, even though I don't have the 5 million or 10 million to buy the plot now, if I take that loan, I can structure it to pay it back over 3 years. So look at it comes back to economics of things, and you look at, okay, how much do I have? How much am I making? How much of that can I sacrifice? And how much of that can I just lock up and look away? Because that's really what home ownership is. Just throw it in it and look away. Yes, there's the possibility of getting returns. There are a lot of things that can be plugged into the co-ownership structure, but our focus is just limited to home ownership. You could look at it for commercial use cases. The possibilities are endless, but limiting it to just home ownership, once you can determine and ask and answer those questions, it becomes easier to decide whether or not you're ready. And then, sorry, if I may add, by the time it becomes a burden, some things, there are also some things that economics will not tell you. Your gut feeling, your mind will just tell you. The time it becomes pressing on you that I am due to have stability, I am due for this freedom, I'm due for this, I am due for that. You will just know. So sometimes it's just a gut feeling, sometimes it's pure mathematics.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. To everyone out there, I hope that we've been making this interesting and engaging so far. If you still have questions, please drop them in the comment section because we are rounding up soon. And we've been talking about co ownership and incremental housing. I will be showing us a video in there. But so far, while I'm getting the video ready, I would like you to drop in one thing you've learned so far in the comment section. And please still drop your questions in there. We will answer them as much as we can. Alright, so please drop one thing you've learned so far and put in your questions in the comment section. We will be reading. Thank you. Is there any plan on ground and where? Like, what's next? So, how do we move forward from here?
Currently, we have opportunities to start now. One of the things that we first consider is honest pricing, irrespective of whatever the area is. And the second thing is the location itself. What are the things that exist around that place? Uh, is it at least close to existing communities, existing facilities, health services? Is it close to, in case of emergency, is it close to either a police station, yes, security forces, and also is it also close to a school? What kind of security system exists around that location? And that helps us to streamline it down into places that we feel that we ourselves can buy. First of all, we see these as something that we ourselves would partake of. There are four locations. So the first is ShopRite, and I'm starting with ShopRite because we removed it from co-ownership. So I can easily just throw that on one side. That is for full ownership, 45 million per plot. So now that that is gone, we have Lackway. There is a 44 million per 600 square meter, which makes it perfect for five people to co-own. So it's perfect for five-way splits. There is also a massive land in Mowe. There are 1,500, but we always recommend the 1,000 because the 1,000 gives more flexibility. While the 500 is good because it gives a four-way split. If we're looking at co-ownership, four people can confidently comfortably, split it equally. But the 1,000 gives better value because this now is split into six. And with that six, with what you're getting in six, you don't have to do a duplex. You don't have to do a higher floor. If you want, so be it, but it's big enough to take a two-bedroom bungalow, better than typical Lagos standard two-bedroom with all the conveniences. And so I always personally recommend that. Now, coming to the third one that I said only people in on our waiting list have access to is one in Abuja. One of the reasons why we've not publicized that is because we don't have an office in Abuja yet. But interestingly and luckily, the land belongs to a family member of one of our community members, and so she felt impressed enough with what we've done and said, "Oh, my mom has one of these properties, and she's willing to allow people just have access to affordable ownership." That a 1,000 square meter plot going for 15 million for the land. But this now, for this, there is a caveat that the titling and documentation will be handled by the co-owners. Quickly, as recap, there is a 500 square meter way of further at 2.3. There is also Lakwe 600 square meter, five-way split, starts at 8.8 million.
All right, I think that answers the question for is it 45 million naira for a land or a house? So the whole plot is 45 million naira split across five or six people. So instead of one person paying 45 million naira, you are paying 8.8 million, starting from 8.8 million for your own slot, and you can build whatever you want to build on it. So I was going to share the link to the PetitHaus store where you can see all the listings and the titles that they have, and you can see how it works. Before I share the link, I would like to share a picture of what this land split looks like. So what I'm sharing now is a piece of land shared by four people. So this is what it looks like. There is slot A, slot B, slot C, and slot D.
If you can zoom in a little bit so that the image is clearer, I just want to at least help so that people can make sense of what is in the image. So there is a red dotted line. That red dotted line represents the plot, the full plot. So in the case of this, for the 4 million naira plot, that red dot is the 600 square meter or the 500 square meter, as the case may be. So if you look around, the next to the red dot are the gray areas, the light gray. That is showing you the compound. There is something government calls setback and airspace. This is the distance between the fence and the line of the building. So we remove that because by standard, apart from satisfying government, it's actually necessary for safety. The one in front is mainly because of electricity. Safety implication of that is because that 6 meter is about the height of an electric pole. So in case an electric pole falls, I'm saying when it comes to safety, if an electric pole falls, it doesn't fall on your own. So I know a lot of people don't know that. That's why I just have to put that in. And the distance between the fence and the back is typically that is averagely, if most buildings are well positioned, it's expected that if anything happens and that building comes down, whether by force of nature or it's pulled down or by mistake, the rubbles will not collapse onto the next building. So that space gives that buffer. So that's why, apart from approval, those are the major reasons why they're important. Now, the next thing you see is these white zones that have shapes, icons of houses that write slot A, slot D. So when we remove that gray area entirely, we then divide what is left equally. That is now where your house will be. That is what becomes the terrace or the duplex or the bungalow, whatever you want to use it for. It then goes to design, from design goes to approval. So basically, why we say some prices start from is because apart from just sharing this slot, before you buy that slot, you will see how much you're going to pay for design, you see how much you're going to pay for approval. Now, for approval is tricky because you may be paying more than government will charge, or you may be paying less. Whatever the case is, if you've paid more, you will collect your change because there is, all these things have receipts. So if you paid less, by the time the process is done, you will refund us that change. Trust goes both ways. So that is why oftentimes we hear starts from so that is that about it. So the slots are now where the buildings will start, and so individual building is different from one another. And by the time you build, the walls also are separate from one another. If you've seen a double wall, that is what we have, that's what you will see by the time the buildings stand next to each other. So when you zoom out, when you come out, or somebody driving by on the street, it looks like a typical terrace, it looks like a typical one building. But when you come close, that's when you now see that slot A, slot B, they are actually separated, they are not together. So I hope I've been able to give better context into that.
Oh yes,
So
oh
slot A
yes.
will
So
now be
slot A will
that
now be that
45 divided
45
by
divided
4.
by 4.
Slot B will be
Slot
45 divided by 4, and like that. So that's how it applies. In cases where it's 15 million, it becomes slot A divided by 4. And then by the time you want to pay, we then have your design fee, approval. There's a calculator that calculates all of that. So there's a prompt, you answer the prompt, and it calculates it, and you see if you make your decision right on the spot.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. So, to recap all what we've been talking about today. Yes, land is not getting cheaper, but we are trying to, what we are doing is to help you, you know, access it at a fraction, fractional, in a way that you are not having to look for the whole, but you can buy what you can afford. And one of the things we didn't add is, if you want slot A and B together, it's possible you can have both. If what you can afford is only slot A, that's fine. If you want to buy 3 slots altogether, yes, you can. But everything is within boundaries. They say, okay, this is yours, and this is what is the other person's own. In the chat session, you can see that I have dropped the link to the app where you can see all of our listings, and you can proceed to buy yours in there. And I also dropped some YouTube links to show you the different listings and the directions from the main road, the distances from major points and landmarks out there. We appreciate your presence this evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope that we've been able to convince you and not confuse you that affordable home ownership is a possibility, and you do not have to break the bank for that. Thank you so much for joining us.